welcome to another Fight of the Night review. This is for the Fight of the Night, which was the main event last night between Frankie, Edgar and Pedro Munhoz. It was at the UFC Apex Center in Las Vegas, and as always, if you don't know, now you're gonna know. I try to break things down as best as I can, round by round. I don't always succeed in getting it fully accurately, but I'm going to try. And also, before I do carry on, I want to say thank you to everyone who watched Over the Top 2 this past Friday. I love the fact that Satoru won the main event Rumble. That was kind of awesome. But with that out of the way, yeah, we'll just get on to the thing now. So the round starts, and before I actually talk about the fight itself, I will say that these two men had a lot of mutual respect for each other. There was a lot of glove touching when Herb Dean, who was the referee for this match, brought him in the middle. So I really did enjoy that. And as for the round itself, it started pretty well for Pedro at first. He landed some really good shots, especially a leg kick that buckled Frankie's left leg, his lead leg. And after that, it was sort of like, throughout the entirety of this fight, Pedro did a lot of pushing forward, and it was quite evident in round one as well. But every time he pushed forward and tried to lead with his left jab, Frankie would counter with beautiful uppercuts and then follow that with the combos. That was sort of the bread and butter for Frankie during round one. He did a lot of countering throughout the first half of the round with that uppercut, then following that with a lot of really good hooks, a lot of really good crosses and jabs, and he was starting to get the majority of it. And then the halfway point of round one kicked in, and Pedro started to he managed to cut Frankie off a bit better around the ring as he was walking him down, and he started landing a lot more shots. He landed some really good looping hook combos, and he caught him with some really good kicks to the body as well. He had a really good front kick to Frankie's body and landed a couple more good leg kicks as well. And by the end of round one, the judges had the significant strikes scored as 23 apiece, which is, even though it's not a lot of strikes, it is 46 in total, and the fact that they got half of that each was quite cool, and the fact that you could see the tilt in the action as well. Very much in favour of Frankie in the first half of the round, then more in favour of Pedro in the second half of the round. So that was really nice to see, and it was a really good round to start things off. Round two started, and it was sort of the same story as I did mention a bit earlier. It was just, a lot of it was Pedro walking Frankie down, and Frankie still continued to counter with his really good combos. But Frankie mixed things up a bit in round two and landed a good takedown. He was caught in sort of a one-arm guillotine for a little bit, but he managed to get free of it. And Pedro actually showed some really good groundwork of his own, especially considering that Frankie is a really good wrestler. Pedro surprised me with how good his groundwork is. He managed to get out of all the scrapes he was in when he was on the bottom on the ground. He managed to get out of that really easily. So yeah, Frankie, he got a couple of takedowns. I think he got 2 out of 5 he attempted in round two, and he sort of took more control of round two. This was where the discrepancy in strikes was a lot more clear, especially with his takedowns helping him, and he landed some really good combos as well, obviously, while he was still backing away from Pedro. And that brings me, actually, to another point. That point being that just because one fighter looks like they're better because they're walking someone down, it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to win, and I'll get to that a bit more later. But yeah, round two is definitely more in favour of Frankie. He lands some really good counters. That uppercut is there for him all day, and all day, and he lands some really good hooks and gets a good couple of takedowns. I definitely, it is clear that he takes round two a bit easier. Round three is kind of another shift though. Frankie is, I think it's because he expended quite a bit of energy in round two with the takedowns, and he's a bit more flat-footed in round three, and which is compared to rounds one and two, where he was a lot bouncier and was doing more head movement, even though he was on the back foot for the first 10 minutes of the fight. And while I remember, round two did have a couple of instances as well. One where Frankie accidentally poked Pedro in the eyes a bit, but the fight didn't stop. There was a moment, I think it was in round two, where Frankie lost his gum shield, or I think that was round one. And at the end of round two, actually, Pedro had a good combo, and it ended with a body kick that went accidentally a bit low and did hit Frankie in the groin, but the round was over by that point anyway, so Frankie got time to rest on the stool. So I thought I'd bring that up before I carried on with round three. And yeah, as I was saying a bit earlier, Frankie was visibly a bit tired in round three. He wasn't moving around a lot. He was still backing up and landing really good combos though, which surprises me. I think that was just his strategy throughout this entire fight, just fight backwards, lean back and punch a lot, and he did that again. But unlike round two, this one was a bit closer in the discrepancy of strikes. I think Frankie had a slight edge in significant strikes, and yeah, he managed to counter some really good combos, but Pedro, like, he was focusing really hard. He landed a beautiful right hand at some point in round 3. He landed some really good leg kicks as well. He kept backing Frankie up against the cage like he had been throughout, the first 10 minutes of the fight. And he just looked like the fresher man coming out of round 3. And that was sort of the main story of round 3. It didn't really have a lot else going for it. I think Frankie feinted a takedown, but he didn't really go for it, because I think he was just a bit too knackered by the end of round 3, so yeah, that would make the most sense. And that's pretty much just how round 3 went, and, Frankie, again, slight edge in the striking, even though it didn't really look like it. Then, bizarrely, to contrast round 3, Frankie had once again found his energy and started doing more stuff again. It was really weird to see it happening. He was, again, backing away from Pedro, who's still closing in with really good strikes, but he was landing beautiful uppercuts, really, really good, like, hook combos. Landed some really good body kicks in this one as well, but Pedro definitely had the advantage in that area. He landed really good leg kicks, a really good body kick, landed some really good hands to the head of Frankie, because that's sort of the main thing you're doing in the UFC. But Frankie, again, he went for a couple of takedowns. I think he got 1, 2. He's a good wrestler. He's good at getting the takedowns, and Pedro once again showed how good he is at recovering from them. I think there was a moment in round 4 as well where he was sort of caught in one, and Frankie, he managed to recover from it, but Frankie switched over to his back, and Pedro did a weird move where he sort of jumped and tilted his body, then rolled onto the ground away from Frankie and got back to his feet. It was certainly a unique thing and not something I'd really seen a lot of fighters do before, and it was kind of cool. But yeah, round 4 is also a close one in terms of striking, and once again, it does depend on what you're looking for in a fight like this, because Pedro was again walking Frankie down, and Frankie was again landing a lot of strikes, even though he was on the back foot. And he did get a good couple of takedowns as well. And once again, Frankie sort of gets round 4 for me. I mean, it was close in round 1 for me. Round 2 was definitely more in Frankie's favour. Round 3, slightly an edge for him, maybe. Round 4, slightly an edge for him. He barely skates by. And that's sort of how this fight went for me, and we still have one more round to talk about, so let's do that. And then we get to round 5, and this is where we sort of see the damage start to take place a bit more. But Pedro, once again, he does his walk down strategy, but Frankie's actually moving around a lot more. Pedro isn't trying to cut him off as much, and Frankie's moving around and trying to stay away from getting his back against the cage, and it's nice to see him actually doing this after 20 minutes of, attempting to do it. He was trying, bless his soul, but he managed to slip by Pedro quite a bit in round 5 and didn't really go for as many takedowns, and the two got into a good couple of fights in round 5, and it looked like Frankie again came off with the better of the exchanges. He landed some really good looping hook combos. I think he might have gone a takedown in round 5, I don't really remember. He manages to counter some really good shots, but Pedro again with that leg kick, which is his best weapon in this fight it seems, and following things up with that jab, and then following up with some good strikes after that. He manages to do that a bit more in round 5 than he did throughout the first 4 rounds, and the leg kick again getting Frankie is starting to bother him as well. It does buckle, and I feel like if Pedro had attacked that a bit more, he would have gotten a finish. Round 5, it didn't really come up with the scores for the strikes, so I don't really know who gets it, but judging by how it looked, I think maybe Frankie again. So yeah, with the entire fight in the bag, and me doing a very bad job of talking about it, I feel like the entire fight went to round 5, which brings me to the decision that was given. So yeah, it was a really, really close fight. I thought it was a really good fight. I don't think it was as good as last week's one, but the main thing I sort of have an issue with is how it was scored. Now, it was a split decision win for Frankie. Split decision. But the card numbers sort of didn't add up fully to me. I think Pedro did well in round 1, but I don't think he fully won any of the rounds. Which is weird, because after round 4 was over, a lot of people, because fighters commentate on Twitter and give their opinions, and a lot of them were saying that they have it 3 rounds to 1, and the 3 rounds go to Pedro. And I was sort of watching it and just thinking, really? That's the route you're looking for? I mean, he landed the heavier shots, but Frankie landed a lot more. I mean, despite the, discrepancy, because you gotta remember, that's for significant strikes. And I fucking hate the fact that significant strikes and just normal strikes are so separate together. I really, really don't like that. just make them the same thing. If they're significant strikes, just add all the strikes together. Like, what makes a strike significant? Exactly. And if they landed that many significant strikes, why weren't, in round 1, if they landed 23 each, why weren't both of them rocked like 23 times each in round 1? To make the fight, a bit more exciting. What is the difference? I don't bloody get it. I just don't. But yeah, the fight itself was obviously really close. Frankie narrowly pinched quite a majority of it for me, and I don't think that a split decision win for him was right. I felt like it was a very, very close unanimous decision win, and you have to remember, I know the results going in, and even then I would have felt like, actually no, I don't think it was close enough for a split decision. I think Frankie narrowly pinched off with unanimous decision win all across the board. Personally, it is just me at the end of the day. And I am glad that the judges thought that Frankie won, because I did as well. I think that's something that does lower it on my favourites list. I wouldn't put it on my favourites list. I thought it was really enjoyable, but the scoring, even though they gave it to the guy who I thought won, and would have thought won even if I didn't know he won beforehand, the scoring was just a bit weird to me. I didn't really agree with it all the way through, even if Frankie won. I just thought it was a bit weird how it was all done up. But once again, I'm not a professional judge. I'm just a fat guy pushing his 30s who talks about this on the internet, so what do I know? But anyhow, that will about do it for this. I really, really hope you enjoyed it, and if you don't, that's fair, I guess. I don't know. I thought this fight was pretty good. Not as great as I was expecting. It's sort of a weird contrast how this was a main event and it wasn't as good as the first fight of the card last week, which was a lot better than this one. I'm just saying. But yeah, it was a pretty enjoyable fight. Frankie Edgar has still got it, and he looks really good at bantamweight, honestly. I would like to see him more in this division. Pedro Munhoz, he's a good talent, he's a really good prospect, and yeah, I feel like if he can put a good string of wins together, if he could put a really good string of wins together, he could be maybe in the upper echelon of the bantamweight conversation, maybe a title holder one day. I would very much like to see that. And with that in mind, I don't really have a lot else to say. I'll see you all probably later for a CWL stream, not PBW, because that's the thing I do. CWL is something that someone else does, and they do a lot better than I do PBW. The next stream of that will be on Tuesday, which will probably be the next thing I see you for, because the next episode of Backtracking is a 2-part episode, and I have no idea when I'll be able to get that out. Some point next week, I hope, but most likely you'll see me before that for another PBW stream, and maybe for another fight of the night. It really all depends on what happens. But as always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye bye.